Mika Zibanejad returns to the Ranger lineup after his one-game benching, and the Rangers fall flat on their face and lose to the worst team in the NHL.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1444 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the number one sports podcast network. So, oh boy, where do we even start after this one? Another embarrassing performance at home, another shutout loss at home, this time 3-0 to the worst team in the NHL, in the Vancouver Canucks, although maybe the Rangers are giving them a run for their money. They certainly appeared to be trying to do that in this game last night. But we got a lot to talk about here. We are going to absolutely crush the performance from this five-forward power play unit that the Rangers just insist on running out there game after game, and Mike Sullivan will not be spared either. Going to talk about his refusal to make any adjustments, despite the fact that that unit has been absolutely terrible. We are also going to basically just explain how bad this loss was with nothing but facts, just straight facts at the end of the episode. Not so much opinion, just facts that will leave you aghast and just kind of illustrate just how bad it's gotten for the Rangers, particularly when it comes to their performance at Madison Square Garden this season. But we begin with Mika Zibanejad returning to the lineup after essentially a one-game suspension, team suspension, or benching, whatever you want to call it, healthy scratching. I said my piece on this whole thing yesterday, so I'm not going to get too much into the details as far as like, how or why or if this should have happened or not. In a nutshell, I'll sum it up real quick here. I did not agree with the decision to make Mika a healthy scratch. Among several other reasons, it was because I felt it would hurt the Rangers to not have one of their only even quasi-scoring threats in the lineup for a game. This team's obviously struggling to score goals, and he was not available yesterday, although he didn't really make a whole lot of a difference in this game either. But bottom line, it does make the team worse to not have him in the lineup. There were a bunch of other reasons. There were some conspiracy theories that fans were throwing out there as well, as far as why Mika was not in the lineup yesterday, or rather the game before this one. But yeah, if you want my thoughts on that, go back and check out the episode before this one. Some fans have suggested, of course, that there's more to this story than Mika just missing a team meeting. But again, we don't know that. So we turn the page, and going into this game against the Canucks, very ominous feel to it. We've seen the Rangers play poorly against bad teams in the NHL this season. I was going to say play down to bad teams, but I'm not even sure they're playing down. They might just be kind of playing even, because the more we see this, the more we see the Rangers come up so short against such bad teams, it kind of just makes you feel like they're right in there with them. They're a bad team for which other teams have to avoid a letdown when they're playing the New York Rangers. But as far as Mika Zibanejad, to me, you turn the page, and it's about what happens now after the healthy scratching. And what happened was this team got absolutely nothing from Mika Zibanejad in this game last night. What happened was another home shutout loss, to just piling those up to start the season, and another loss to, again, the worst team in the NHL. This is not all on Mika, but obviously he's a part of it. The Rangers have now 3 times this season lost to a team that has the worst record in the NHL. The Sharks, the Flames, the Canucks. That's very difficult to do, and they've done it before Christmas. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2025-2026 New York Rangers. There's seasons where you won't even have an opportunity to do that, because obviously the standings are going to fluctuate a little bit. You might go through an entire season without playing the team that has the worst record in the NHL. Well, the Rangers have already lost 3 times to the team with the worst record in the NHL. And they've done it again before we even get, properly into the Christmas season here. But it wasn't good. Mika comes back, and he's out there with Panarin and Lafreniere. And at this point, man, the line combinations, I just don't think it really matters that much. The analogy that a lot of people will throw out there, and I guess I'll go ahead and use it too here, you're basically rearranging the furniture on the Titanic. It makes very little difference. I will say I like the fact that Mika immediately got his spot back. I know some people might disagree with me there and, scratch him again or bury him on the 4th line or, scratch Lafreniere. There's a lot of that out there right now. Here's the thing. If you do all those things, if you bench Mika and you scratch Lafreniere and you scratch this guy and that guy, who's left? I mean, how many Taylor Radishes do you want in this lineup, right? So I am glad that Mika Zibanejad got back into the lineup, got back into a top 6 role, but really didn't see a whole lot from this line. I mean, Panarin was somewhat productive out there and had some good shifts and some good scoring chances. He was at least shooting the puck, which is more than I can say for Mika Zibanejad. He did next to nothing in this game. We had a situation in the second period where, Will Borgen fed him a one-timer opportunity and he completely shanked it. We haven't seen as much of that from Mika Zibanejad this season, him shanking one-timers, but, there it was on full display in the second period. As far as Mika's stats in this game, he ends up with 22 minutes and 15 seconds of ice time. That was the second most among New York Ranger forwards, only to JT Miller. Mika was also a -1, had only 2 shots on goal. So really a whole lot of nothing from Mika Zibanejad. I mean, can anybody really point to a play where he looked dangerous or looked like he was about to score or, played with any kind of urgency or anything out there? He was equally as ineffective as basically everybody else on this team was last night. I mean, again, try to point to something noteworthy that Mika Zibanejad did in this game. And he wasn't the only one. We'll be fair to Mika here. How about JT Miller? When's the captain going to pick it up this season? We're approaching the midway point, and we have a player that thus far, I mean, he's picked it up a little bit in the scoring department. He's had some clutch moments for the Rangers this season, but he just doesn't look like JT Miller, and that's obviously very concerning moving forward. And, to get so little from him in a game where he's playing his former team, wasn't there a whole bunch of drama with Vancouver last year? Him and Pettersson, they don't get along, and somebody's got to get traded, and JT Miller is ultimately the guy that's dealt back to the New York Rangers. Where was any kind of fire from JT Miller to stick it to his former team? Shouldn't there be like something there? Shouldn't that get you going at least a little bit? Didn't really see it. Lafreniere. Oh my God. 1 shot on goal from Lafreniere, basically just drifting around the ice the entire night. And I got to give a shout to Rick Carpiniello. He made a very interesting observation on Alexis Lafreniere. And it's one of those things that maybe subconsciously you notice it, but man, did he hit the nail on the head with this observation. He basically tweeted out, I don't have his exact words in front of me, but he basically tweeted out that anytime Lafreniere has the puck along the boards in the offensive zone, he always picks the path of least resistance and basically just heads back toward the blue line. And that's so spot on. He did that multiple times in this game. There was a situation where the Rangers, they had their only good sequence of the game basically in the second period. They're applying pressure. The Lafreniere, Panarin, Mika line is out there. The Canucks are back on their heels. They have to ice the puck. They've got guys that are trapped on the ice for more than 2 minutes, and the Rangers are swarming in the offensive zone, down 2-0. You think maybe they're going to get one here. Lafreniere does exactly what Carpiniello was talking about. He's along the boards. He heads back to the blue line, and he just fumbles the puck. The puck goes into the neutral zone, and he gives the Canucks basically a chance to catch their breath. Ladies and gentlemen, the number 1 overall pick. Not good. Not good. So, again, Mika wasn't the only guy that was scuffling, but these Rangers star players, there's too many nights where they're absolutely invisible out there. They don't create enough scoring chances. Really, the only one that was doing anything was Panarin. Again, I thought he at least gave an honest effort in this game. Didn't obviously amount to much of anything, but he did end up with 8 shots on goal in this game, which was more than a third of the total shots on goal by the Rangers, accounted for by one player, Artemi Panarin. And as far as Mika goes, to kind of put a bow on this section, he said, as far as why he was late the other day, this is the only other, little bit more information that we've got on the situation here. Mika said there was a traffic accident and he got stuck behind that. Said he hopes that everybody's fine. This is what he had to say after the game. Rules are rules, and I was late. There's not much else to say, honestly. That's the reason why I was late. But the fact that I was late, I was late. Rules are rules. That's all I'll say about it. It's not the worst quote you'll ever hear from Mika Zibanejad. But it's kind of a situation where he did the minimum. I mean, he kind of took accountability there. You can't really say that he didn't. But I don't know, man. The whole thing is a mess. And you hope he's not going to sulk about this and basically just disappear for a whole bunch of games at a time. That would obviously be unfortunate if that were to happen, because if the Rangers have any shot of turning this thing around, which seems to be getting less and less likely by the day, but if they're going to do it, then they're going to need more from their star players. And obviously that includes Mika Zibanejad. So, yep, that's pretty much it as far as the Mika chatter is concerned. And again, if more information comes out about this, if there's more layers to this that we haven't uncovered yet, and stories break, obviously we'll talk about it, but that'll pretty much put a bow on the whole Mika Zibanejad getting stuck in traffic and being a healthy scratch for one game. But in just a minute, we're going to turn our attention to the coaching staff. They are not blameless here either. And there is one thing in particular that they're doing that is driving a lot of us up a wall, and that is this insistence on running a 5-forward power play in the absence of Adam Fox. So we will discuss that in just a minute. We'll discuss the power play itself, just how awful it's been, and we're going to call out the coaching staff for refusing to make any adjustments. So we will do all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, and one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. Receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdowns, drive results, totals. Every possibility is on the table. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting this show through all the peaks and valleys, and unfortunately more valleys than peaks this season for the New York Rangers. Also, thank you for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On New York Rangers with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. And for the Everydayers, in our next episode, going to break down whatever happens between the Rangers and the Blues on Thursday. Puck drops at 8 p.m. for that one. And this is all part of the Rangers playing 5 games in 7 days. Thus far, obviously, 0-2. But for right now, let's keep the focus on this game and shift it to the coaching staff. And let's go ahead and just bury this 5-forward power play unit. We just got done talking, obviously, about the Mika healthy scratching. And look, there's a lot of opinions out there on this. And I've heard from people on both sides of it, and certainly we welcome the discussion here on Locked On New York Rangers. And there's people that did not like the healthy scratching. There's people that were in favor of it. Bottom line, you can make a compelling case either way. And I can see it from both sides. And I do respect that it's Sullivan's decision. And if he feels that it has to happen and rules need to be followed and a message needs to be sent, then so be it. I can at least live with that decision if I don't necessarily agree with it. There is no defending this power play right now. There's no defending any aspect of it. There's no defending how they're playing out there. There's no defending this decision by Mike Sullivan and the coaching staff, this insistence on continuing to go with 5 forwards. I think a little recap is in order here, just to kind of illustrate how we got here. So Adam Fox gets injured, and obviously that's a big loss to the Rangers, including the power play. The Ranger power play had been right before the Fox injury. They had a stretch of 8 for 18 where, it was starting to buzz a little bit, and you're starting to feel a little bit better about it. Then the Rangers, they have a situation where, again, the Fox injury strikes, and they decide to go with 5 forwards, which was my greatest fear about what the Rangers were going to do after Adam Fox got injured, because we saw them try this a little bit last year when they had to go with Adam Fox. They went with 5 forwards, and it was really bad, and this year it's been even worse. And all this brings us to right now. The stats tell you the story. They are now 0 for 25 with 5 forwards on the ice for the power play. They are 0 for 25. And they have now allowed 3 shorthanded goals in situations where they've gone with all forwards on the power play. Now, the third of those shorties occurred last night, and it was during a 6-on-4. The Ranger net was empty. But you know what? Facts are facts. It was another shorthanded goal allowed. And frankly, I'm not in the mood to cut anybody on this Ranger team any slack right now after the slop that we had to watch last night. But the craziest thing to me is that I feel like of all the games that the Rangers have gone with the 5-forward power play unit, this is probably as good as it looked. Because there were a couple of scoring chances mixed in there where you thought maybe the puck was going to go in the net. But ultimately, all of it leads up to, again, the Rangers go 0 for 4 on the power play, and they end up giving up a shorthanded goal, and they only produce a grand total of six shots on goal on the 4 power play opportunities. So here's my question to all of you and to the Rangers themselves. What game is Mike Sullivan watching? In what universe are these results even close to being acceptable? The I was going to say success rate. The lack of success rate, now 0 for 25. How is that acceptable? Or how is the eye test acceptable? Where everybody just looks completely discombobulated out there and nobody knows what's happening. There's nothing even representing, a chance at a greasy goal or a redirection goal or a one-timer goal or any kind of a goal or any kind of decent scoring chances, at least not with any sort of regularity. I mean, they are few and far between. Maybe one or two opportunities last night where you thought there was at least a chance that they could score. Look, I didn't even want them to try this. Again, I had some flashbacks to last season with the 5-forward power play, and I remember how bad it was. And they tried it. You know what? If you want to at least give it a shot, fine. I'm reasonable. Usually, sometimes, once in a while, the Rangers test me just like they test all of you out there as well. But if you want to at least give it a shot this season, new coach, new system, and whatnot, 5 forwards on the power play, fine. But you know what? When is enough enough? This power play has been horrible, and they refuse to make any changes. This power play, this miserable 5-forward power play that the Rangers keep insisting on using, it actually cost them a game against the Ducks. That's why they lost the game. Final score of that game was 4-1, but, empty netter and then a goal with 2 seconds left. It was basically a 2-1 game. The Ducks' first goal in that game was scored as the result of the Rangers basically giving up a shorthanded goal during a 5-on-3. Technically, the one penalty had run out, but the player had barely gotten back onto the ice. The Rangers have the 5-on-3, and they give the puck away, and the Ducks go in on a rush. The Rangers don't defend. Igor's hung out to dry, and the Ducks score a goal that made it 1-0. Now, the Rangers ended up tying it, and then the Ducks took the lead after that. But that cost them the game. The fact that the power play is so horrible, and not only are they horrible, but they give up shorthanded goals, and they give up countless shorthanded scoring opportunities against. You need a defenseman out there. It cost them the game against the Ducks. The one nice thing you can say about last night's game is that as bad as the power play was, it didn't really cost them anything. I mean, the Rangers were largely just bad in this game, and they weren't going to win anyway. And, the power play is just one of many aspects in which the Rangers struggled last night. So, again, it cost them the game against the Ducks. It certainly didn't help them against the Canucks. And here's the truly insane part. Are you ready for this? The Rangers are going to do the exact same thing the next game. You watch. They will not make any changes to this. They are going to keep just banging their heads against the wall and banging their heads against the wall and banging their heads against the wall until Adam Fox comes back. And that'll be nice when he comes back. I mean, there's people out there that think that Adam Fox is a detriment to this team and he actually hurts the team. I mean, I don't know where you come up with things like that. But if nothing else, I mean, he's going to give the power play a little bit of a boost. But in the meantime, why are we doing this? Why can somebody else not have a chance? Why can we not try something even the slightest bit different? Why can Scott Morrow not quarterback the top Ranger power play unit? Would they be 0 for 25 if Morrow was out there for all those power plays? I mean, maybe they would. Who knows? But it's literally impossible for them to do any worse. And at least with Morrow out there, maybe one of the shorthanded goals doesn't happen because you've at least got a defenseman on the ice who can defend and prevent guys from getting to the front of your net while you're on the power play. It's brutal. Isn't David Quinn in charge of the power play? Wasn't that going to be one of his duties when he was, signed on to Mike Sullivan's coaching staff? Is this Quinn's decision? Is he the one that's insisting on 5 forwards? Is it a collaborative effort by all of the coaches on the staff? If it is David Quinn's decision, at what point does Mike Sullivan overrule him and say, you know what, we tried it your way, we're going to do something different? I mean, you could probably at this point stand to just try to change things up in general on the power play, try to get a greasy goal or two when you've got the man advantage. But if nothing else, the personnel has to change. And at the very least, you need a defenseman on the ice because you have to stop bleeding these shorthanded goals, these shorthanded scoring opportunities the Rangers seem to give up every single game. And here's my question, and we'll end this section with this. When is enough simply enough? How bad does this Ranger power play unit need to be before some changes are made? And that's not a rhetorical question. I'm actually looking for an answer. What has to happen? How atrocious, how anemic does it have to get before we try something different? 0 for 25 right now with 3 shorthanded goals allowed. Apparently, that's not enough to make any changes. I mean, we'll see if they do in the next game. But as of right now, they've made no changes whatsoever. 0 for 25, 3 shorthanded goals allowed. Would 0 for 30 be enough to make some changes? 0 for 40, would that be enough? It gets to the point where you almost, as a Ranger fan, if you want to see some changes to this Ranger power play unit, you almost have to start rooting against them because Here's why. That sounds crazy on paper. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say the next game against the Blues on Thursday, a borderline miracle happens, and the Rangers get a power play, their first power play opportunity of the game, and they look good, and they finish, and they score on the power play. Well, now that entire group just got a reprieve, and the 5 forward power play just got a reprieve, and that means the Rangers are just going to keep using the same 5 players and not using a defenseman on the power play moving forward. Now, in theory, it's a good thing because they score on the power play, right? And it's over. But in practice, you know what's going to happen. They're going to go back out there, the same 5 players, the same 5 forward power play unit, and they'll go like 2 for their next 20 after scoring that 1 goal. But because they scored, it's like, oh, well, hey, maybe it's going to turn. Let's keep going with these guys. So it's probably better if the Rangers go like 0 for their next 8 or 0 for their next 10 on the power play, because at least that would finally force the Rangers to accept a reality that this is not working and we have to make some changes. If they score on the next one, all those guys get a reset and they get a fresh start, and we have to go through all this nonsense for like 5 or 6 more games before they finally make a change. I mean, at that point, Adam Fox might be back, and he can't return to this lineup a moment too soon. But for right now, my God, make some changes. Make some changes to this atrocious power play unit. So in just a minute, we're going to keep everything rolling here. We're going to basically just illustrate with stats. I'm not even really going to share my opinion that much. I mean, here and there, but we're just going to look at some stats together, marvel at how bad it is, marvel at how unbelievable these stats are, and just use that to illustrate, how bad things have gotten at home for the New York Rangers. We will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch. The holidays are amazing, but they can also get overwhelming fast. Travel, gifts, parties, year-end expenses. It's really easy to lose track of your money this time of the year. And that's exactly why Monarch has become such a game changer. If you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, simple dashboard. The holiday spending category can become a lifesaver. You can see exactly what's left in your gift and travel budget in real time. In minutes, you can check your net worth, link all your accounts, and keep track of your contributions before deadlines. Do not let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarch.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, so exactly how bad was this loss for the Rangers last night? We're basically just going to use facts to break it down here. Hockey's very subjective, perhaps more so than any of the other 4 major sports. So that's why I think a lot of us, we can watch a certain game, we can watch a certain team, we can watch a certain player and come away with, very different opinions on how they're doing and how they're performing. There's only so many stats to go around, offensive stats and plus minus, and then you've got these analytics as well. But, it's very difficult, I think, to quantify hockey always, or more difficult to quantify hockey than, the other major sports. So we're just going to use facts here. We're just going to use facts. Rangers have now lost 3 times this season to the team with the worst record in the NHL. Mentioned that a little bit earlier, but the Sharks and the Flames back-to-back, now the Canucks. Again, nearly impossible to do, but the 2025-2026 Rangers have you covered. And again, it's insane to me that it's happened, not so much because the Rangers have done this 3 times, but the fact that they even had the opportunity to do this 3 times less than halfway through the season. Because, how often is that going to happen where, when you're playing this team or that team on the schedule, that they just happen to be the worst team in the NHL? And it's already happened 3 times with the Rangers, because the standings obviously fluctuate a little bit, but they've had, 3 chances to beat the worst team in the NHL, and they've lost all 3 of those games. So fantastic. Another thing that I'm going to mention here is the Canucks were lousy in this game too. I mean, it was nothing that they did. This is a fact as far as I'm concerned. Valiquette basically said as much after the game as well. This wasn't a case where the Canucks were playing over their heads, for the night, and they just had a really good night, and pro hockey players and our pride's on the line. Let's go out there and take it to them. There was no, anything that they did that was, overly impressive. They had 17 shots on goal. That's the fact. 17 shots on goal for the Vancouver Canucks. It honestly felt like less than that, but because the Rangers were so bad, it didn't really matter, and the Canucks obviously basically just cruised their way to a win. But look at the goals that they scored. The first goal that the Canucks scored was when the linesman threw a better block on Matthew Robertson than anything we've seen from the Giants or Jets this season. And that resulted in that goal by Evander Kane. The second goal got through quick. I mean, he was the best player on the ice for the Rangers, low bar, but he was the best player on the ice. He would have wanted that one back. And the third goal was empty netter. So the Canucks didn't do anything special. They didn't overwhelm the Rangers. They didn't possess any kind of otherworldly speed, or they weren't out there bullying them or anything like that. I mean, they were basically just going through the motions too. And they ended up, getting the win because, again, of how anemic the Rangers played in this game. On top of that, the Canucks missing some of their best players. I mean, if you go back to last year's trade deadline, the best three players on an already bad Vancouver Canucks team were all unavailable for this game here for the Canucks because JT Miller was traded to the Rangers. Quinn Hughes was just recently traded as well. And Pettersson did not play in this game. So you're basically going up against not only a bad team, but a team that is bad and doesn't have any of its best players that would have been their best players even from just a couple of months ago. So there's that. There's also these home stats. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. I'm just sharing facts here. The stats speak for themselves. These are not opinions that are debatable. These are facts. The Rangers have now been shut out 6 times at home in 17 games this season. More than a third of their home games, they have been blanked. The NHL record for most times being shut out at home in one season is 16 by the Blue Jackets in 2006, 2007. The Rangers are only slightly off that pace, and they might give them a run for their money, especially when you consider the fact that if things keep going the way they're going and the Rangers stay in the spot in the standings that they're currently in, then they're probably going to be sellers at the deadline. And if Panarin gets traded, the chances of more shutouts greatly increase at that point. So they will give them a run for their money. It really does start to feel that way. The Rangers are also overall 4-10-3 at home. So basically 4-13 at home. I know overtime losses count different. You get a point for that, whatever. They lost. They have 4 wins, 13 losses at home this season. They are not winning even a quarter of their home games. I feel bad for season ticket holders. I mentioned that on social media last night. Some of you might be listening to this. Some of you might be watching this. My heart goes out to you. It really does. I hope that in spite of how bad this is, you're still able to have fun in the world's most famous arena. Maybe you're there with your family or your friends. Hopefully there's some joy, some happiness you can pull out of it. It's certainly not from the on-ice product this season, and especially in this game last night. But again, my hope is that you're at least having some fun and some enjoyment out of it. This was another loss for the Rangers in the second game of a back-to-back. Again, sticking with facts here. The Rangers in the second game of a back-to-back this season are now 0-5-1. And it's not a massive sample size, but that to me sounds like a team that lacks endurance. It lacks enough fire, enough willpower to come back the day after you already played a game and put your best foot forward in the next game. I mean, they've looked lethargic in a lot of these games. A lot of these games, they're the second game of a back-to-back. It's like they need their rest, and they're just not ready to play. And that's not good. That's on the players. That's on the coaching staff for not having them ready to go. It's obviously not good. 6 chances to win the second game of a back-to-back, 6 losses for the Rangers. Every time that it feels like maybe this team just got its signature win, its signature big moment, they go right back in the toilet. Have you noticed that this season? Every one of the Rangers' really, really nice wins has been followed by bad performances, in some cases, maybe some losing streaks. Not too long ago, this was just 3 games ago. The Rangers are down at home in the first period, 3-0 to the Montreal Canadiens. They come storming back. They win that game 5-4 in overtime. Awesome. That was fun. Way to not give up, way to not die, way to fight your way back into the game, way to persevere. And man, that's the jumping point of the season. We're going to springboard off of this, and we're going to start winning some games and climb the standings. The 2 games since then, both at home, by the way, a 4-1 loss to the Ducks, a 3-0 loss to the Canucks. Yeah, way to really ride that excitement that you had from that win against Montreal into the next couple of games. Good job, Rangers. Way to really make good use of what should have been, a season-turning win, or potentially be a season-turning win there against Montreal. And speaking with facts, I mean, some of these quotes after the game, I don't know. I understand that it can't always be doom and gloom, even after a bad game like this. You can't always, if you're Mike Sullivan, call out your team for being terrible. If you're the captain, JT Miller, you can't always call out your team for being terrible. I get that. But listen to some of these quotes. We'll start with Sullivan. If I had a solution, we would certainly bring it. We're doing our best to control the process because that's really, at the end of the day, what's within our control. What does that even mean? I thought we defended hard tonight. They had a few looks. Their first goal was a little unfortunate. After that, they had a few looks, but not a lot. I thought we defended hard. I thought we controlled territory. We had a significant amount of ozone time. The power play had a lot of good looks, so I feel like we're trying to solve it for sure. But is it a little bit concerning at this point? Yeah. So a lot to unpack there. But did the Rangers defend hard, or do the Canucks just not have any scoring threats? I think it's the latter. I think it's the latter. I mean, really, like, I guess, hey, look, the Canucks only got 17 shots on goal. I guess you have to give the Rangers a point or two for defending hard and limiting the scoring chances. But that's a team that, honestly, they might have even fewer scoring threats than the Rangers have. And that's saying a lot. And I think it's really just a case of the Canucks couldn't do anything either. They couldn't really create any scoring chances. I don't think it was anything the Rangers were doing that was overly impressive in terms of how they were defending. And as far as like ozone time, you know what, man? You could spend half the game or 3/4 of the game in the offensive zone. If you're not scoring goals and this is a repeated problem, then it's just that. It's a repeated problem, and it doesn't matter how much time you spend there. You can't put the puck in the net. And there doesn't seem to be any changes coming when it comes to that. And there's no solutions that really exist as far as how to fix that. Then you've got JT Miller. I'm not concerned. I'm just pissed off. You feel like you work so hard and you make a lot of plays. And a lot of nights, I feel like we're outplaying the other team and we end up in here pissed because we didn't score enough goals. It's a fine line. I mean, did they really outplay the Canucks? Because in the third period, the Rangers looked like a team that was just kind of skating around an ice rink until somebody told them that the game was over and they could go home. Now, to Miller's point, he does have something that he said there that I think is somewhat accurate. There have been games this season where the Rangers outperformed their opponent and they didn't get the result. And that obviously is unfortunate. But at a certain point, we get tired of hearing about, expected goals for and, all these analytics and shots on goal and whatnot. At a certain point, we're 35 games into the season, 35 games. They can't score. I mean, they can't finish their chances. This is not bad luck anymore. This is just who they are. They have a team of guys that, first of all, they don't have a lot of offensive punch in the first place. And whatever offensive punch they do have, there's a huge Achilles heel, and that is the complete and utter inability to finish scoring chances. So, I mean, for me, it just kind of rings hollow at a certain point. Yeah, they got goalied a couple times earlier this season. Sooner or later, you got to figure out a way to put the puck in the net, and the Rangers can't do it. And that's kind of where things stand right now. We'll call it there. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, and I will see you next time.